following video is not made for kids. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello to my subscribers, this is the TF Geek coming to you with my next review, which will hopefully be a short and successful one, and today we're going to be taking a look at Transformers Studio Series 86 Voyager class Junkion Scrapheap. So yeah, I am really excited to finally have this figure in my Transformers collection. I got him a couple months ago. He was released at the same time that the Studio Series Gamer Edition Starscream figure was released, which I already reviewed. And yeah, I'm just really excited to finally have a figure of this guy. So for those of you who don't know, Scrapheap, along with the Junkion Junkyard, who was released in the Studio Series line last year, these two were the first, well, technically they were the second and third Junkions to be given names and identities after Wreck-Gar. I can't remember the exact time on the Transformers Wikipedia when it says they were fleshed out at Transformers characters, but yeah, Junkyard and Scrapheap were the second and third Junkions to be given names and identities, and it's a thrill to finally have action figures of these guys. Just like Wreck-Gar and Junkyard, Scrapheap, this technically isn't the first action figure of him to be released by Hasbro. Back in 2011, the first Chug-style figure of Wreck-Gar that we got was the Deluxe Class Transformers Reveal the Shield Wreck-Gar figure that was released in 2011. And a couple months later, that figure was repainted into Junkyard by Hasbro, and it was also repainted and retooled into Scrapheap by Takara Tomy. And then 5 years later, in 2016, the Scrapheap figure that Takara Tomy had released was repainted and released by Hasbro, but it was released as an exclusive once again in a 3-pack, which was the same way that the Takara Tomy version was released. So the deluxe class figure of Scrapheap has become very rare and hard to find due to the fact that it was sold in a 3-pack that was only available online. Officially, it was released exclusively at Target stores, but it hardly showed up anywhere, and the only real place to get it was the internet. So this is the first ever figure of Scrapheap that's been released at mass retail. I bought a duplicate copy of the Generations Deluxe Class Junkyard figure and tried to make my own custom Scrapheap figure. Didn't come out as well as I had hoped it would, so I'm just really thrilled to finally have an actual official figure of Scrapheap here in my Transformers collection, and that's some of the brief history behind him. Him here on the box, you got some artwork of Scrapheap. It's the same artwork on the front of the box. And yeah, he's pretty impressive looking Junkion, just like Junkyard. He does have a new retooled robot mode chest. I believe his chest, his head, and his shoulders, those are the only parts of him that are brand new molding. I think actually he might also have new arms as well. We'll get to take a look at it as soon as I get him out of the box. But unlike Junkyard, who Hasbro had to give a new registered trademark, Scrapheap has always been called Scrapheap in the Transformers comic books. So yeah, Hasbro did manage to get a registered trademark on his the original name that he's always had. Granted, they did have to put the word Junkion in front of it, but I personally don't care because I'm just thrilled to finally have a figure of him in my collection. Here on the back of the box, you've got the product photos of Scrapheap. You got him in his robot mode and motorcycle mode. He transforms between both modes in 24 steps. His one-sentence bio reads, Scrapheap and the Junkions ambush the crash-landed Autobots. It's a big screen inspired, the Junkion dance party. So yeah, it's pretty much all there is to say about this guy. So far the Transformers comic book that where he got his name has been his biggest appearance in the Transformers franchise. Same thing with Junkyard. Junkyard's enjoyed slightly more popularity than Scrapheap has due to the fact that his deluxe class figure from the Generations line back in 2011, it was released at mass retail, while Scrapheap was an exclusive. So without further delay, let's get this guy out of his box and take a close look at him in robot mode. Alright, and so here is Scrapheap out of the box and transformed into his robot mode. And I put the wheels on his legs because I thought that's where they had to go, but according to the images on his box, I just realized that they're actually supposed to go up here on his arms. arms, but you do have options of putting them in different spots if you desire. So yeah, there he is in the official configuration with the wheels attached to his arms and his legs just kind of being without any additional armor or junk, pun intended, hanging off of it. But yeah, here is Scrapheap in robot mode. The new parts that he has are he does have a new robot mode head, which is distinguished from both Junkyard and Wreck-Gar. He does have a new robot mode chest. He has new shoulders, and pretty much that is it. Looking at him compared to the other figures, he does. Um, he does. I was right. He does have different sculpted lower arms right here, and just a minor nitpick that the lower arms here on Scrapheap, um, they're actually cast in the same gray plastic that his fists and elbow joints are cast in, but they just painted it up entirely in this peach orange paint, and so there's a risk that that paint could chip off over time. So it is a little disappointing that, at least for the lower arms it's all paint, ain't instead of actually being cast in the plastic color that Hasbro Undercar told me wanted it to be. But that's just a minor nitpick. Uh, as far as stuff that's painted on him, unfortunately, his entire helmet, the brown and even the light gray, bluish gray on the A of the faux windshield, that's all paint. I can't tell what plastic it actually is sculpted in, and it's hard to tell. But yeah, that is paint on his head. And it might be cast in the same a light gray paint that his face is cast in, but it's really hard to tell again. Parts of him that are paint, his waist piece, his abs, that's paint, and then the exhaust pipe, the gray exhaust pipes here on the inside of his legs, that's paint as well. It's hard to tell, but I think everything else might be plastic. Oh no, I was wrong. The new shoulder joints, which are I thought were cast in gray plastic, it's actually gray paint. They're cast in the same brown plastic that the back of his shoulders are cast in. So, reason why I'm talking about this is because, unfortunately, if you have both Wreck-Gar and Junkyard in your collection already, there isn't much else to distinguish Scrapheap apart from his newly sculpted parts. He does have the same horns on his head that are on that were given to Junkyard, but they've been reversed. First, this horn was on this side and vice versa on Junkyard, so they're rotated in the opposite direction. Action as a result. Also, a little bit of a distinguishment between them, but apart from the newly sculpted parts that I mentioned, he does have new lower legs as well. Because he has these new knee spikes and of course the exhaust pipes on the interior. But apart from his legs, shoulders, chest, and head, and lower arms, pretty much everything else about him is the same. He has the same waist piece, same pelvis, same upper legs, hips, and thighs, same robot mode feet, same fists, same backpack, which is the fuel tank for the motorcycle mode. And the same fists. Yes, but he has enough newly sculpted parts. It's 50-50, the new parts versus reused parts to distinguish him from Wreck-Gar and Junkyard. Articulation's the same despite these new sculpted parts. Head's on a ball joint so it can swivel left and right, look up and down. Double jointed shoulders, so the arms can go in and out, in forward and backwards. Swivel joint in the bicep. Hinge joint in the elbow, although it's really tight out of the box. Waist joint. He does have kind of an ab crunch, but that's more of a transformation joint. If you move his motorcycle saddlebags out of the way, the legs can go forward and backward and out to the side pretty far. Swivel joints in the thighs, although it's a little hard, and of course swivel joints in the knees, swivel joints in the feet, and you have ankle rockers so you can get him into a sprawl-legged pose if you desire. The hips are on ratchet joints, so unfortunately there isn't much like see how on the first ratchet the leg goes out this far compared to when the leg is straightened out. So unfortunately you can't really get him into like a slight sprawl-legged pose in the middle. But yeah, that's just a minor nitpick for me. I'm just again thrilled to finally have an action figure of Scrapheap, the third Junkion after Wreck-Gar and Junkyard, are to be fleshed out. The wheels are the exact same as they were on Wreck-Gar and Junkyard. Same colors as well. The hubcaps are yellow plastic, and then the tires themselves are, I believe they're cast in let's see. Well, on Wreck-Gar I think they were cast in gray plastic, and then the spikes were painted red. But I think it's the opposite here on Scrapheap. The tires are actually cast in red plastic, and then the tire is gray paint. So that's a little discouraging. But considering the fact that when you push the wheel spin on solid surfaces, that's the spikes that hit everything. I guess it makes more sense for the spikes to be unpainted. And since they're actually going to hit the solid surface of something. But yeah, because of his new retooled legs, Scrapheap doesn't have the, I think it's 3mm port to hold the spikes that Wreck-Gar and Junkyard have on their legs, even though it looks the same. Let me just take the spike out. So if you look, so this spike, unfortunately, it pops off my copy of Wreck-Gar all the time. But if you look there inside the spot where it is, you can see there's a slightly elevated 3mm port right there that the leg spike actually sits on top of to try and hold it in place, and that is absent here on Scrapheap. Um, so it's a tight fit with putting Wreck-Gar's leg spike into that port on the leg. It's the same on both sides. So he does have, even though he does have the potential for the leg spikes to be attached to him as well, he unfortunately does not. From a standpoint of accessories that are available and the parts that you get with Scrapheap, some collectors might find him not worth the price compared to Wreck-Gar and Junkyard due to the fact that the lack of knee spikes means that he actually has less parts than the previous two versions of this mold. And of course, as you've all noticed before I even pointed it out, unlike Wreck-Gar and Junkyard, whose weapon is the four-bladed axe that looks like a pinwheel, Scrapheap actually comes with a dedicated laser gun that the Junkions were shown using in the Transformers Generation 1 movie. So, as far as the amount of plastic you get with this figure, Scrapheap surprisingly has the least amount, despite his newly sculpted parts on him. But again, I sound like a broken record at this point, but I'm just really thrilled with how he came out. So to have all three of them on screen at the same time, here is Studio Series 86 Scrapheap with Wreck-Gar and Junkyard art, and again, it's pretty nice sculpting all around. Another part that Scrapheap is lacking from Wreck-Gar and Junkyard is that he does not have the plastic windshield that was given to Wreck-Gar and Junkyard right here. Even though he has the same backpack and he has the spot for that windshield piece to be attached to, he does not have it on there. And so I had said at the start of the review that he has a faux windshield here on the top of his head, but unfortunately, the windshield on Scrapheap's head is meant to be the actual windshield of the motorcycle mode. So, all around, and like I said, Scrapheap, what he has going for him, despite having less parts than Wreck-Gar and Junkyard, is that he's the nostalgia for the fact that he's the third Junkion who is given a fleshed out identity in the Transformers comic books. And like Junkyard, he technically is one of the Junkions that appears in the Generation 1 movie on the planet Junk. But of course, Wreck-Gar is the only one that was named and identified in the film. But overall, I'm probably blinded by nostalgia at having not having haven't been unable to obtain Scrapheap's previously released deluxe class figure here. But yeah, for me personally, I think he's unique enough from Wreck-Gar and Junkyard that he's worth adding to your collection. And again, because the only spikes he has are the ones on his arms, you're supposed to put the wheels on his arms. On Junkyard, they officially on the product photos go on his legs, and Wreck-Gar, both wheels were on the left side of his body. One is a shield, one is a egg shield, so you can put the different wheel configurations with these if you want. And I would have preferred if they would have given him the pinwheel, had a Scrapheap use the same pinwheel weapon that Wreck-Gar and Junkyard aim with in addition to the laser gun. But I guess Hasbro, and Takara figured one handheld weapon was enough for each of these three Junkions. But at least one thing Scrapheap has, as that Junkyard does not, is that he still has the same name that he had in the comic books. Infamously, Hasbro has had to, they couldn't get a registered trademark on Junkyard's original name that he had in the comic books, so instead he's been called Junkion. Even so, it's led to confusion amongst more Transformers fans than ones who aren't confused about which of these guys are which of their names they're supposed to be. But this guy is Junkyard, and this guy is Scrapheap. Whether or not we will ever get Junkions named Scrapyard and Junkheap officially is uncertain. But yeah, that's all the legal technicalities behind these guys. Nice. One thing that I will say that another feature that Scrapheap has beat out over Junkyard. On my copy of Junkyard, the reason why I have his handlebars still flipped up is because not this one, but this handlebar over here is extremely tight, and when I was trying to transform it into robot mode, I had a Junkyard in a storage bin with some other Transformers transformed into motorcycle mode. The handlebars, they're made out of rubbery plastic for safety issues, and the swivel joint is really tight on Junkyard's handlebars, but here on Scrapheap, turn around so you can see, the swivel joints on his handlebars are loose enough that you can transform them without them feeling like they're going to flop around all over the place. So, there's no fear of you accidentally ripping apart his handlebars, unlike Junkyard. Wreck-Gar, his handlebars, it's about halfway through. But yeah, so they at least I guess they had decided they figured the handlebars on Wreck-Gar were loose enough they had to be tightened on Junkyard, but when Junkyard was released, it was discovered they were too tight, so they loosened them up again here for Scrapheap, so I do love that they did that. And so, for me personally, because his handlebars are pretty difficult to move around, I display Junkyard with his handlebars pointed up, while Scrapheap's on display pointed down. And so, unfortunately, yeah, because he does have the exact same, I thought he had the same feet, but I'm realizing no, he does not. So the top of the feet, which are cast in yellow plastic on Scrapheap, that is a new top half of the foot. But the reason why I thought it was the same is because it has the same ridged sculpting detailing on the back of the foot, and then the bottom of the foot itself is the same. But yeah, he basically has different tops to his feet than Wreck-Gar and Junkyard do. And I'm looking at them all, and I actually noticed that all three of them have different tops to their feet eat amongst all three of them, so that's a pretty neat thing to see. Yeah, another thing I wish they would have done with Scrapheap is given him the kickstands on the back of his legs, because having them on the front of his legs, while they don't stick out of place until you notice them well, it kind of doesn't make his legs look like they're that sturdy, but what are you gonna do? So I babbled on far longer than I wanted to. So without further delay, let's get these guys transformed into alt mode and wrap up the review. Alright, and so here is Scrapheap transformed into motorcycle mode. And again, just like the Generation 1 Junkions, his head actually transforms, kind of sort of, into the front of the motorcycle. So the windshield on the top of his head becomes the motorcycle's actual windshield, but it's really tiny compared to the front of the motorcycle mode. So yeah, there's his robot mode chest forming the front of the motorcycle. So all that new sculpting transforms into a motorcycle that's looks far different compared to Wreck-Gar and also Junkyard. One thing to note is that there's right here on the front of the motorcycle mode, right in there, it sits on two tiny little pegs, and they sit really in there really tightly, so there is a risk that those could pop off and the front of the motorcycle could no longer hold in place someday, so that's a real concern. Another thing that is preventing Scrapheap from fully transferring properly is that the back tire, you're supposed to shove the legs all together because you can see there's a square port right there that it's supposed to connect to. And when it all transforms properly, the feet sit here on the bottom of the motorcycle nice and flush, but as you can see, they're wanting to separate out. And it's because, I don't know how you're going to be able to see it, but if I straighten the motorcycle out like that, as you can see, one of the legs is sprawled slightly out to the side, and that's because, unfortunately, the wheel doesn't want to be sandwiched entirely into between the two legs to form the back of the motorcycle, so that is a little slightly concerned. And the instructions show to just place his laser gun here on the side of the motorcycle mode. I kind of now wish they would have given Scrappy 2 laser gun, but I guess that keeps in theme with the Junkions not having a symmetrical appearance when they appeared in the Generation 1 movie. But yeah, overall, I really enjoy how Scrapheap turned out. Um, sorry I didn't point it out in robot mode, but I believe just like Wreck-Gar and Junkyard, Scrapheap doesn't actually have any Autobot logos on him since in the Generation 1 movie, even though the Junkions allied themselves with the Autobots. They never actually adorned any Autobot logos, so I don't think there's one to be found on him, but I think that's true for all of these Junkions. And for one last size comparison, here is Scrapheap next to Wreck-Gar and Junkyard. Again, they are a pretty nice looking team of motorcycles. I have the kickstands deployed so they don't fall over. But yeah, even without the kickstand there, because the wheels are on the spikes, it rolls as well as it rolls on a flat surface as well as a spiked wheel would very terribly. But overall, I really thrilled with how Scrappy turned out. And again, here he is. Here's a close-up of the front of the motorcycles. Wreck-Gar and Junkyard are the two, out of the three of them, Wreck-Gar and Junkyard are the two that are the most familiar to each other. So Scrapheap being the most different and the third release of this mold, while it does make him feel like, somewhat unique compared to his Junkion compatriots, I forgot the point I was trying to make. You can't. The differences are a lot more noticeable on here compared to the other two. And there is one more additional transformation joint. You do have to rotate the legs at the thighs to get his legs transferred into the back of the motorcycle mode. And what that results in is that, unlike Wreck-Gar and Junkyard, where the exterior of the robot mode thighs sit outward, so it at least looks like there's uh, the supports for the back of the motorcycle are made out of solid metal. The interior of the thighs ends up sticking outward on Scrapheap, so it looks like he has some more. You could, I guess, use the double mushroom peg for the swivel joint in the thigh as a shock absorbing springs if you want, but that's a bit of a stretch. So that's just a minor nitpick because, again, I'm just thrilled to finally have an action figure of Scrapheap here in my Transformers collection. Actually, not turning around, so the side with the laser gun is pointing towards the camera. So, for the final proverbial question, do I recommend getting Scrapheap and adding him to your Transformers collection? Absolutely, I do. You cannot go wrong having Scrapheap in your collection, even if you already have Wreck-Gar and Junkyard. Every version of this mold that's been released so far has been a fantastic Junkion to have in my collection, and if the mold were to be used again, I would definitely add it to my collection. So thank you guys all so much for watching. This has been the TFang. This is my review of Transformers Studio Series 86 Voyager Class Scrapheap. I highly recommend you get this figure, especially if you already have Wreck-Gar and Junkyard. Thank you guys all so much, and until next time, you guys stay safe, stay healthy, transform and roll out. Goodbye, everyone.